Welcome to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good afternoon.
It is Monday, December 18th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse, where you can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to videos, access to our Discord server, and more. There has been a ton of news this week. We're not going to be able to get to everything.
Nope,
we're not getting anything at all.
Here's the end of the show.
Over. No. Richard is remote, so he's across Cyberland. And Richard, you mentioned you have not been playing any games.
No, I just haven't been playing God of War.
Oh, okay, sorry. I interpreted it as not playing any games, which then I would interpret as Honkai Star Rail.
Sure, yeah. No, and that's absolutely fair. I guess I just haven't been playing anything with I'll use the phrase substance.
I did games.
I did start playing the finals.
Okay.
It's a free-to-play shooter that was not revealed, but released during the Game Awards, and it's a 3v3v3 team-based extraction shooter. You're not extracting anything, you're just kind of depositing, but I have kind of at this moment, a love-hate relationship with it, because it very much reminds me of Battlefield Bad Company 2, particularly the destruction. The destruction is some of the best I've seen, and the destruction is they want you to use it as part of a strategy when you're playing these games. The goal is to a kind of a treasure chest of money appears on the field, and you're supposed to grab it and go deposit the money at a terminal. And when you deposit the money, it essentially takes time. I don't know the counter, like how long it actually takes, but you see it filling up. But while it's doing that, other teams, you have to safeguard it, and other teams can come in and steal it. And however much time is left, they overtake that time. So if you're able to get in like right before it finishes, then you can steal it, and you'll end up getting the deposit, which pushes you forward. And
interesting.
Essentially 3 deposits win. And you have 3 different classes. There's small, medium, and large. So small characters are very fast. They have weapons like Uzis, pistols, automatic shotguns, and they have certain abilities like grappling hooks, cloaking devices, stuff like that. Medium characters are support. So they do have a healing beam, a la Team Fortress 2 or Overwatch, and they have weapons like assault rifles, some shotguns, stuff like that. I don't know what their other abilities are, actually. Oh, they can drop a jump pad for everybody to kind of like launch off of. And of course, you have your heavies, which they have this really neat charge move that you can use to break through walls and also charge into enemies. But I've seen people use those to quickly take down buildings.
Oh, that's awesome.
If you hit the structure points, correctly, then you can take it all down. Like, you can take down a whole building if you try hard enough. And there are levels to where there are kind of you're in like villas, and there are 3-story houses every now and again. And sometimes the 3rd floor of a house will have the vault that you need to deposit. And so if I were to go under the vault and throw a mine onto it and detonate it, the vault is going to drop down to the 2nd floor.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and then you can. It's all based on the strategies of destruction, but also being good at the game is very important too, and that's where the hate comes in, because it is very much a game to where the skill gap is going to grow very fast. Mm-hmm. People who are good at the game are going to be very good, and the people who are beginners or casuals at the game are not going to have a good time. And it also is, of course, lean towards PC players. Much like Apex is, there's a lot of movements that you can perform as a PC player that are probably going to be discovered and just will be unobtainable by console players. And so the PC players will definitely have an upper hand. They always do, though, with aiming. So it's kind of become very tough to have a good game when it comes to your KD ratio rather than anything else. It's best to play with friends, obviously, always, but I think it's quite enjoyable. And it's one of the more generous free-to-play games as well. Of course, they do have a battle pass. Of course, there is cosmetics. Nothing is pay to win. Everything can be unlocked very easily by just playing the game normally. But of course, it's all cosmetics that cost actual money. But yeah, I have a 50-50 on it. I like it more than I don't like it, but I want to see where it goes from here. But yeah, it's good.
I remember back in the days of Battlefield Bad Company, there was an objective game where like one team was defending, one team was attacking, and you had to blow up like 2 weapon caches before the defending team would lose and they'd have to fall back. And there was a specific map, I think it was like set in Alaska along a pipeline. I remember this map pretty well. And
I know
one of the starting caches was in a building. And I remember I don't really know if this was a meta strategy or not, because it was part of the destruction of the game. But I remember because that was right around when you were able to install games directly onto your 360. So it would just read that you had the disc and then play it from the hard drive.
Right.
So if you did that, you would load into games quicker and multiplayer games quicker. So I remember I did that. And then whenever that map would come up and I was on the attacking team, I would run straight to the tank, hop in the tank, and I would drive the tank straight down the battlefield and ram it straight into the building where the first objective was. Ram it, fire the cannon, and I would bring down the building on top of me, and the tank would survive, but it would destroy the objective. So within 30 seconds, the first objective would just be gone.
Oh, man.
And that kind of stuff in Battlefield was just so freaking awesome. Changing
the torpedoes,
like
ramming speed.
Exactly, yeah. One thing about multiplayer games that I think is interesting, Richard, that you kind of mentioned is how I think there's been this shift away from like team. Finals is obviously team-based, and Overwatch is team-based, but it's not a very large amount of players, right? We're talking 9-10 players, right? Maybe a little more.
In a match?
Yeah, across games, like in finals or Overwatch, what have you. Mm-hmm. But I think like back in the day, you had more games like Battlefield or Halo where you had 16 on 16, you had 32, 64 multiplayer battles and stuff like that. Yeah. And what that meant was that if one player wasn't as good, it was not as much of a problem because you had a bunch of other players sort of making up the slack, or you weren't as important to your team because you had more than just 2 teammates. But yeah, with how popular games are that have like those smaller teams now, I think that has made multiplayer games in a sense somewhat more difficult because there's more riding on your shoulders because you only have a few other teammates or whatever. Which I don't know, is interesting, but
that's very true. And recently I played Battlefield 2042. I recently in the last half year, and I find that even Battlefield 2042, as many players as there are on both teams, I still felt that if you were really good, that could tip the match.
Well, yeah, definitely.
And well, yes, of course. But if you also were if you weren't as good as anybody else, it would, of course, obviously be a detriment. But like Chivalry 2 is a good example. Chivalry 2, you can do a lot of stuff, and you'll still help the team, like regardless. Mm-hmm. But in Battlefield 2042, it kind of feels like they were, despite having huge teams moving towards the singular people who were really good, can make or break the match.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rather than the entire team.
Yeah. And I guess that's always sort of been the nature of a multiplayer game, is how much of an impact one person can have on a game. I remember a meme I saw of Battlefield 5. It's of the guy in a car, and it's like him driving. The format is the guy's driving, the next panel is something that's annoying, and then the next panel, the guy puts the car in reverse and he's like backing up.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah.
It was the guy driving, and then the panel was Battlefield 5, and it showed the kill death screen, and it showed some player in an airplane, and they were like 103. And so the guy's like, "Let me just back out of the server real quick. I'm not gonna play one of those assholes." And so stuff like that's definitely always existed. But that's cool. I'm glad that I'm glad that you're enjoying it, and that sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds like there's a lot of cool strategies you can think of and stuff like that. And also, there's the ability to a heavy just to run through a wall. Sounds cool as hell. So
yeah, it is really cool seeing it in action for sure.
It's giving off Juggernaut vibes.
Juggernaut. I was gonna say Kool-Aid Man. Connor, what have you been playing?
I haven't had a lot of time to play much, but I've just been, while laying down and going to bed, just playing Stardew Valley on my Switch.
Oh, that's relaxing.
Yeah, very relaxing.
Or it's intense, depending on how you view it. Oh God, it's almost night. I gotta go over here and I gotta get this stuff.
It's a cozy game.
Okay, it's a cozy game.
It's a cozy game.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the difference between like Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing is that like Stardew Valley, it's like you could do whatever you want at any time, really. Or at least that's what it seemed like when I was playing it. Yeah. But
You're not an
but with Animal
indentured
Crossing,
servant.
it's just like, no, you have to wait for these places to be open at these times to do anything. And it's like, oh, all right.
Yeah, the shop's open 6 days a week at reasonable times. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just think that Tom Nook should have an 8-8-8. 8 hours a day for work, 8 for sleep, 8 to do with what you will. You guys should think he should be working 24/7 or something. Jeez.
Yeah, he should.
He should. All right. I'm obviously kidding. Tom Nook, fictional character.
But I did recently stumble across a YouTube video of a group of guys playing a mortar team and squad.
Oh man,
it gave me the itch.
Mortar teams are fun. Oh man, just you saying that gives me the itch. And they just released a new faction. What country was it? Was it Turkey? It may have been Turkey. I don't know. It's always a little awkward when they add. I mean, it's not like the United States military has been a bastion of glory and honor, but when they add China or something in there, it's like that's kind of weird. But no, they added a faction that was really cool. Yeah, mortar squads and squad are. I would say if you're just starting off and you want to practice squad leading, mortar squads are good to do because you don't have to move a whole lot. So you find a spot, you plop down, you build up your mortars, and then it's a lot of communicating. So you don't have to move, but you have to communicate a lot. So it's a good way to get into practice, communicating, coordinating fire missions and stuff like that. And a good mortar team can be extremely effective in squad because suppression matters in squad. Because you, like, if you think of a game like Battlefield, the mortar concept doesn't really work because you respawn in 5 seconds and you respawn on your squad leader. So that that doesn't really, you can't really deny an area. But in squad, if you just want to, if you want to mortar a road to stop cars from traveling down that road, or you want to mortar an objective to suppress guys
to screen in advance,
smoke mortars, all kinds of. There was a couple months ago I was playing and we were attacking an objective, but we were up on a hill, which is a great spot to attack down from, but there's not a lot of cover on the hill, so it's kind of a good and bad situation, because if you're going to attack an objective, you want to be coming from up high, but like a hill with lots of trees is the optimum situation. A hill where it's like bushes and rocks isn't that great. And the objective is at the bottom of the hill, and we had a really good mortar team, so I just had the mortar team drop smokes on the objective itself. And what that does is it doesn't give us running down the hill cover, but it makes people sitting in the objective trying to shoot at us, they can't see us because they have to flush out of the cover that they're in to get eyes on us. So it kind of works in reverse, which is neat. But yeah, new squad leaders, mortars are good. And then once you get that gateway drug, Then eventually your defense squad, where you move and you fend objectives. And then if you really want the hardcore shit, then it's straight up attack squad, and that's when that's when you're moving, that's when you're getting different vehicles,
smoking and joking.
You're going 150 miles an hour different directions.
High speed, low drag.
You're high speed, low drag. You're calling helicopter transport different points of the map. That's when that's the part of the commercial where the girl's smashing the eggs with the with their fry pan. Oh. This is your brain on coke.
Hey, that's not just any girl. That's Rachel Lee Cook. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I knew you would know that reference. See, in my head, I don't even think I've seen the commercial. I've just seen the Robot Chicken version of the commercial.
Oh yeah. She voiced her too, and then the Robot Chicken one.
Nice. Neat.
But I've just gotten, because I have a couple like alternative country playlists on my Spotify. And I'm like, no, I just want to be a Logi truck driver going through it, listening to country.
Yep, that's totally a thing. Yep, I'll still remember we were under heavy fire, and Connor just drives through like there's two huge groups of, there's like bad guys and good guys firing, and this like in this huge firefight over this objective, and Connor just drives right through the middle of the firefight. Meet me, just right up to the objective because we needed resources so bad. Oh, that was so funny. You just get out. You've got like 6 bullet holes in you. Did I do good, Sarge?
6 bullet holes, 8 flat tires.
Yeah, exactly. But you got the resources we needed to us. Okay, anyway, so I have been playing God of War Valhalla, which is very good. It is a roguelike. It is very reminiscent to Hades, not just because of the similar settings, because you're both dealing with pantheons of gods. Mm-hmm. And this one talks a lot about Kratos' backstory, so you're going to hear a lot about Greece and a lot about the first 3 games. But first 3 games and maybe Ascension as well. Ascension was the PSP game, right?
No, that's PS3.
Oh, which one was the PSP game?
That was Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta.
Okay, they may talk about those too. I'm not sure, but
they do Chains of Olympus particularly because that deals with Calliope.
Okay, but it's very good. It's combat centric, but there's a lot of story going on. It delivers its story really well. I won't spoil too much, but basically Kratos has received an invitation from someone to go to Valhalla, and Valhalla is like the Nordic heaven, I guess, in a sense. Not exactly a 1-to-1, but to gain entry into Valhalla, you have to go through like a trial, mm-hmm. right? And this trial is not so much a trial of enemies that attack you. It's like trials of your own mind. So it's sort of, I know there are other better metaphors out there, but you're sort of going through and dealing with your own stuff. And Mimir is there with him, and Mimir is going through Valhalla as well. And every now and then they get separated and then they rejoin. And Mimir talks about what he is seeing in his own Valhalla, which is interesting. So it's about like I don't know, you could say it's like the Dark Place in Alan Wake. It takes your insecurities, things about your life, it's just sort of reflecting it back at you, making you think about yourself. It's a ton of combat. It's a roguelike, so you're gonna die. I would recommend pumping up the difficulty to. It starts you off on it has a recommended difficulty setting, and I found it pretty easy to start off with, so I went to the next one, and that's where it felt like, okay, this kind of feels like a roguelike, but it's not as difficult as most roguelikes are. Like most roguelikes kick your ass for a couple hours before you really get the hang of things, and maybe it's just because I'm used to the combat in God of War, but this one I feel like I'm making progress quicker, relatively speaking, when it comes to other roguelikes. But yeah, one of the main challenges is it wants you to change up your gear. So in God of War Ragnarok, there's a bunch of different shields. You have 3 different weapons and a bunch of different abilities. And it kind of incentivizes you to change up all that stuff and go into each, when you make a run through Valhalla, change up your tactics a bit. You don't get your runic attacks. So it's like if you have a runic attack you really like with a weapon, when you enter Valhalla, you have to find them, and they're randomly dropped. So it kind of forces you to learn how to use new things and stuff like that. I've really enjoyed it. Where I'm at now is the game starts, the very first area, there's a couple easy enemies and a couple chests. You open one of those chests and you pick a path. The path of the axe, the blades, or the spear, right? And you choose one of those, and then as you're going on that run, the runic attacks and the other special abilities and perks you find are going to be associated with that weapon. So if you pick the blades, a lot of the stuff you're going to find is going to be buffs to the blades, or buff to blade attacks, or runic attacks for the blades. You may find a runic attack for the axe or spear, but it's going to be mainly focused on the blades. And I think that's really cool because God of War has a pretty deep move set, and a lot of stuff I didn't even touch, especially with the shields. Like I didn't even touch a lot of the shields. Mm-hmm. So going into it, and it's the same thing where it incentivizes, it wants you to use the different shields. And you're facing tough enemies too. It's not like you're just killing cupcakes. You're going to fight off against new bosses. There's Greek mythology this time. There is some awesome enemies with some awesome animations. So you're going to be facing new stuff, and you're going to be using abilities that you may not be used to. And I've found that really fun, especially getting back into the hang of things, because it's like I have... I don't know, there are certain abilities with weapons that I didn't use, but then it's like when I choose to focus on that weapon during a run, it's like I have to rewire my brain, and I'm like, okay, like with the Dropnir spear, I didn't, if you go back and square, Kratos does like a AoE attack in front of him, and I like never use that through Ragnarok. But in Valhalla, because you're focused on it, you kind of have to rewire your brain. So it's like you have to, okay, here's what I'm going to do this time. I got to remember to use this moveset, do this, this, and that. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I don't know how it's free. I assume PlayStation has a reason for this, whether it's getting people back to playing PlayStation for the holidays or getting God of War back in the news cycle.
No, they canceled The Last of Us multiplayer.
Yeah, this is it. Okay, and this is their solution. Not a bad solution. No. Yeah, but I don't know why it's free, because it could easily be like a $20 edition, and it would be worth it because it's a ton of fun. And there's a lot of new stuff. It's combat centric, but there's a lot of new dialogue. There's a lot of new story. The characters, you're talking about not only Kratos' backstory, but you learn about more with Mimir. You're going to learn more about Kratos and Freya's relationship with one another, which is, kind of uneven because of their history. You're going to learn about Mimir and, what's the Valkyrie queen's name? Not Freya, the other Valkyrie queen. It's going to... Sigrun, yeah. Sigrun. You're going to learn about their relationship. There's other characters, and then you're also he and Kratos and Mimir will have conversations about Odin, and like they'll talk about things that happened during Ragnarok that puts things not necessarily in new lights, but just a little flavoring on things that happened to let you know how these characters felt or feel after everything that happened in Ragnarok. And it makes me want to play through Ragnarok again, because damn, Ragnarok was good. But so yeah, highly recommended. Turn up the difficulty if you want like a real roguelike challenge where you get killed a lot. Where I'm at now, it's definitely a battle of attrition. I go through a couple realms or rooms, or however you want to put it. And it's like Kratos will lose a little bit of health and I'll gain a little bit back. And then after a while, I'll lose a lot of health and I'll gain a little bit back. So it's like it's always this battle to keep as much health as I can. Because there's not a whole lot of opportunities to gain health. And like a lot of other roguelikes, you have to, you choose your path like in Hades, and on the door, it'll have a symbol that'll tell you where you're going to go. And you have to decide, am I going to go here or am I going to go over here? The one maybe major thing I'll say is, because it's based around things that already exist, It's not like, I don't know. It is structured a little bit differently. How do I put this? Like in Returnal or in Hades, there are one or two abilities where as soon as I get those things, everything else kind of doesn't matter. It's like, okay, I get this ability or I get the assault rifle and Returnal, and maybe that just me my personal taste. Once I'm there, after that, everything else is nice. But that major thing is the thing I have to get. Ragnarok is not like, or Valhalla is not like that, because it wants you to focus on all these different weapons. Imagine if every time you went through a Hades run, you had to choose it. You don't have to, but it incentivized you to choose a different weapon. So it's like, rather than finding something that you really like and focusing on that, it's all about exploring all these different things that you already have, which is cool. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. The combat's really good. The new enemies are cool. And yeah.
Everything's cool. Video games are cool.
Video games are cool. Boring conversation anyway. Okay, no, just kidding. That was a Star Wars reference. I should have gone to everything's fine now. Fine, we're all fine. How are you? And then Han shoots, and then it says boring conversation anyway. Okay, let's hit the ad. Let's go to the news. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. The Last of Us multiplayer game has been canceled. This was announced in a blog post by Naughty Dog. The studio says, quote, "The multiplayer team has been in pre-production with this game since we were working on The Last of Us Part 2. As the multiplayer team iterated on their concept for The Last of Us Online during this time, their vision crystallized, the gameplay got more refined and satisfying, and we were enthusiastic about the direction in which we were headed. In ramping up to full production, the massive scope of our ambition became clear. To release and support The Last of Us Online, we'd have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, severely impacting development on future single-player games. So we had two paths in front of us: become a solely live service game studio or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage," end quote. The studio says they have more than one brand new single-player games they are currently working on. So Richard, you referenced this a couple minutes ago. We were talking about Ragnarok. What do we think? Do we find this surprising? I can't see you, Richard, so I'll go to you first. Do you have anything to say?
I don't know. I don't know about surprising, disappointing. I think it's disappointing only because I was a great big fan of factions mode in the original Last of Us, and I have a couple friends who are also very big fans of it, and it's disappointing only because I feel like the pressures of like modern day game development and the pressure to retain players probably led to the downfall of this mode. Also, ambition. Ambition is another problem. You can't have a multiplayer game now without any sort of monetization on it. It's impossible, and I can't think of a game right now that has multiplayer that doesn't have any sort of monetization to it. And I think that if you were any of the big three, mostly Xbox and PlayStation, the higher ups would probably think you're crazy for not putting any sort of monetization into the game. And I think that is one of the problems with factions mode. I don't recall you being able to customize your character too much. But I would assume that in this version of Last of Us Online, they were trying to create something that felt more like a living world in, of course, set in The Last of Us. But in doing so, knowing how much detail is in The Last of Us 2, how much time and effort that would go into creating and maintaining that world. And I think that's where the ambition kind of got ahead of them, if that makes sense. And instead of getting what arguably most players wanted, which was essentially factions mode again, but just brought to Last of Us 2, they tried to give us something more substantial, something more ambitious, but it's not really what the fans for the multiplayer mode were wanting. And so now we have this outcome, which they are not wrong. Their last sentence, either become a live service studio or continue to focus on single player games. They're not wrong, and I don't think they're wrong for this decision. It's just disappointing, and I think that there are way too many factors pointing at the situation in order to even try to sort it all out. So, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think this is an existential question. What is a multiplayer game? What is your multiplayer half? What is its purpose? Mm-hmm. If it has to be fucking Call of Duty Warzone, then realistically speaking, you're just going to have to make concessions because Call of Duty Warzone demands a mass. And okay, not Call of Duty Warzone, just the idea, the concept of a Warzone type game that just demands a certain amount of resources. I think you can look at Halo Infinite as a similar case. Infinite single player has some incredible ideas, but it's just sort of gotten tossed and swept under the rug because Infinite is now some free-to-play bullshit, and that's really disappointing. And I don't know if Infinite needed to be that. Could have Infinite been another Halo 3 where you deliver a multiplayer game in a similar structure? I think so. Mm-hmm. Would it have as many players? I don't know, but if you weren't worried about it retaining players after 5 or 10 years, then you could have a Halo 3 structure and be fine. And yeah, I don't know. I'm happy that they made the decision to do so because it would suck if Naughty Dog would have had to go down that route. But and it also sucks that it doesn't seem like we're going to get a Factions Part 2 because that seems like it would be cool. And Richard, you're more familiar with Factions than I am, but I remember Factions being it wasn't like some expansive multiplayer section with all kinds of, I don't know, like you would consider Overwatch or something. I don't know. Or like it was just in multiplayer mode, correct? It wasn't like a massive online, like GTA Online, where there's all kinds of different shit to do or whatever.
It was a simple, I think it was 4v4. But I think what made it fun is that the mechanics themselves that The Last of Us have created a multiplayer game that required players to outplay and outthink others. And that's why a lot of players liked it. The thing that I'm not going to say set it apart, but the slightly unique thing about it was that it was a tug of war between different factions, but it was kind of this simulated, like, okay, the world has ended. There are pockets of people vying for just resources, and that's it. That's all it was. And there didn't need to be a story in it because it's just a multiplayer game. Like, it's just 4v4 matches. It's not that serious.
Yeah,
but it was all about the mechanics, and it was all about how you played the game. And that's why there are very dedicated fans for Factions mode. And yeah, like I said in my explanation, that's pretty much all most people wanted was just Factions 2, and that's it.
Yeah, and so I guess the piece of this story that we may never know, or maybe we'll know one day in a big Jason Schreier piece or a big Cecilia D'Anastasio piece or
people make
Stephen
games.
Totillo or name a journalist, is how this became, is why, what were all the decisions made and by whom to lead Naughty Dog to the point where a Last of Us 2 multiplayer section couldn't just be a new Factions mode that had a limited scope, that had a limited idea, limited concept, and wasn't this huge tentpole thing that everything has to be now, that Sony was gonna fucking lean on to have some kind of like huge retention associated with it. And the next question then is, can a Factions 2 exist today? And I think it can if you set your expectations right. But the expectations in the games industry are so skewed right now because I think you have people in positions of power that see Warzone and think, or see Fortnite or Roblox and think, okay, everything needs to be this. And so they set those expectations, which manipulates the games economy into having to facilitate that somehow when it's not necessarily in a position to, or when it really shouldn't to in the first place. And that is so incredibly frustrating, because I'm afraid that now the conversation is going to be something like, I don't know, that games like The Last of Us, when it came out, where it had your single player portion, your multiplayer portion, people played it, and we all went on with our lives, that thing can't exist anymore. But it's like, it can't exist in what context? Can't exist because it won't get you 1 million players a year, everybody spending $1,000 on cosmetics every month or something like that. No, it won't get that. But a limited scope of a multiplayer game may get you, something. It's not going to be completely devoid. I don't know. It's just, it's frustrating because it seems self-imposed, and I don't know the details behind how something like this came about, and we may never know. But I just wish the games industry wasn't in this kind of position where so much stuff has to be a mega hit for it to work.
Yeah.
The video games economy is complicated and blah blah blah. But yeah. I guess the other thing is this is again trouble for Sony's live service sector. Has not been great for Sony. And they're, 2 weeks ago, it's like, we have 5,000 live service games in development. And the news since is, but we're canceling The Last of Us 1, and Bungie's not doing so hot. Yeah, arguably the biggest. Definitely, I think the one with the biggest brand name on it. And not to mention with how popular the show is now, right? And so it's like, and we're having trouble at Bungie, and it's like, well, Sony, do you need 10 live service games, or do you want 10 live service games because you've got assholes with dollar signs in their eyes that think they can make the next Warzone?
Yeah.
And that comes down to, I guess, political philosophy when we get to it, because it's all about sustainability or ever expanding companies until you burst like a dying star. Executives have a golden parachute and everybody else gets laid off. I don't know.
Of course.
So yeah, it's frustrating. I hope this doesn't result in layoffs or anything like that. That would be also incredibly frustrating because there's already been way too much of that this year. Yeah. Is there anything else we would like to say?
I just want
go ahead
to answer one of your questions on the question of who. Ultimately, I think Herman Holst is going to be the one that either needs to or will take the responsibility for all these games getting canceled. Being the president of Sony Interactive Entertainment. Again, much like with every other CEO or president that's been, a subject on our show within the last year, you're the top dog. Someone's got to answer. Usually it's you.
Yeah, yes. And I don't necessarily have all the sympathy in the world for everybody underneath an executive position, and even some executive positions like executive producer or whatever. Executive colloquially meaning, C-suite. But when it comes to I don't know, placing blame is tricky, but I do think accountability is the thing, right? Blame it has like a negative connotation to it, but there is there is a certain amount of accountability that needs to be discussed here. And maybe Herman Holst, I forget who the guy.
I mean, especially since back in May 1st this year, quoted saying PlayStation Studios are making a variety of games that could be referred to as live service games.
Yeah, and that's in Push Square.
Yeah, and that's him leading the charge on that.
Yeah.
So again,
and so it's him. I don't remember the name of the guy who took over for Jim Ryan, or is taking over in an interim position for Jim Ryan. I don't know how much Jim Ryan is to be held accountable for this, because he was in his position when all this live service bullshit started at Sony as well. Yes. So I'm sure there's plenty of that to go around, and I don't know. If if I can make a wish, I would say Sony, just go back to focusing on single player. You can have a couple live service, but don't mortgage your future and your better teams so that they can try and create a war zone from their Last of Us and other single player centric IPs. Richard, sorry, go ahead.
The interim CEO is Hiroki Totoki.
Thank you. Richard, I thought I heard you about to say something. Was I wrong?
No, you were. Sorry.
Oh, okay, I am wrong. All right. Is there anything else we have to say about this before we move on?
Not specifically about this.
Good.
Okay. Epic has won its lawsuit over Google. A unanimous jury said, sorry, I'm laughing just because, I don't know, it just brought my memory back to like when Epic called their like lawsuit Operation Enduring Freedom or something. They're suing Apple.
Operation David versus Goliath.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, D-Day's like, we're going to call it Operation Overlord. Like some boring fucking. And Tim Sweeney's like, it's just going to be Operation Justice for Mankind. Anyway, Epic wins lawsuit over Google. A unanimous jury said Google maintained a monopoly on app distribution for Android phones, as well as in-app billing services. We don't know what the win means yet. Epic didn't sue for monetary damages, and what the result will be, we won't know until mid-January. So the fallout, we don't know. Reading from a piece by Sean Hollister over at The Verge, quote, Epic vs. Google turned out to be a very different case than Epic vs. Apple. It hinged on secret revenue sharing deals between Google, smartphone makers, and big game developers, ones that Google executives internally believed were designed to keep rival app stores down. It showed that Google was running scared of Epic specifically, and it was all decided by a jury, unlike the Apple ruling, end quote. Google does plan to appeal, but we're not going to get, we're not going to get an update on this for about a month. Okay, important update here. It will be fascinating to see what happens if suddenly one half of the consumer market of smartphones can make 30% off, guys in a banana suit purchases on Fortnite, and Apple still takes that 30%. Because if that happens, what I'm curious as to how does this incentivize people buying phones? Does it? I don't know. It might. If it's just easier to make purchases on like an Android device than it is on an Apple or something, what do companies do to do that? What do they do can they implement things where they can dissuade users away from going to an Apple phone? Will you see things like, if you're a Fortnite user on Android, you get a bunch of free bullshit, stuff like that, just to incentivize people to go over there. I'm purely speculating here.
Ultimately, I don't think it's going to change much in the cell phone purchasing market, because the people buying the cell phones for the people who are playing Fortnite, the large majority of Fortnite players, don't care about Fortnite. They're caring more about phone plans and stuff like that. So it's going to be outside of that market, and the people that do care about playing Fortnite either aren't going to have a dog in the fight or are going to stick with what they have already.
You make good points. But if we're going to extend the speculation further, because Fortnite is not the only popular mobile game.
No.
Right? There's a bunch of other bullshit out there too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so and some of it's good. Honkai Star Rail's good. And it's valid. It's okay.
It's sorry, all Richard. Bullshit.
I'm sorry, Richard. I apologize.
Well, Connor's right. It's all
Squad is the only game for real gamers. Every other game is fake. Okay? Until you're leading an attack and you're leading men in a video game, you're not a real gamer. No.
Squad for PC, Onward for VR.
There you go. See, Richard? See?
VTOL for flight sims.
There you go. You're a real gamer TM now. Okay, so damn it. I'm supposed to make fun of you for your random, obscure RPGs. You can't make fun of me for the things I like. That's not how we do this show. Okay. What the fuck was I going to say?
There's other bullshit games besides Fortnite.
Yes. So if there are people that spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
So on mobile games, right? So let's say you're a guy, you're 40, and you're a whale, you have a good job, you spend $2,000 a month on a mobile game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say something crazy like that, which I'm sure stuff like that exists. That is a whale. And let's say that the studio that makes your game has some crazy incentivizing deal somehow. You know, you get 1,000 coins a month if you're on Android, right? And a huge part of your life is playing games on the phone, right? Does that incentivize you to switch your phone? I think for whales, that's a possibility. And if whales are where the majority of revenue is coming from, then that's a huge shift in the economics, right? Because if that 30% right now, let's say 50% of the whales are on iPhone, 50% of the whales are on Android, say.
Yeah.
And after this goes through and after Epic can do its own app, or other app companies can do their own app, where they can shave off that 30% and take it all on an Android device, and then they incentivize those whales to make the jump over to Android over the course of some few years because they're making more money over there. Does that change the landscape? That is pure speculation because there's so much else that can happen. Google's going to appeal this, obviously. We don't know what this is going to mean in mid-January. Sorry, I don't know why I said April. But I think that's a fascinating question. And if that happens, what kind of pressure does that put on Apple, if any? The amount of phone users dwarfs the amount of phone users that use it as a gaming centric device. But I still think it's big enough and lucrative enough that Apple
I think one thing that isn't
messed with
that would be a larger contributing factor is the sunk cost fallacy of how they are, like how much of their life is tied to, say, having an Apple phone versus an Android. If they are, elbow deep in the Apple ecosystem,
that's a good point.
They're not going to change.
Yeah, and
if they have so much set up through Apple that changing to an Android phone, they have to reorient the majority of their life. They're not going to switch. It doesn't matter what incentive. The life expenditure of changing everything won't be worth it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like if you've got a bunch of songs on iTunes
or even, and not even just that, like people using Apple Pay, people that just use like their thumbprint to sign into apps or websites. Well, now you got to go through and reset all that because it may not play nice with Android. So there's a larger issue than Epic being like, hey, we'll give you 1,000 credits a month.
Yeah, I don't think that's it. Yeah, pure speculation, and I don't think that's crazy. I did see Tim Sweeney in an interview today talk about, again, the 30% Steam take. I don't think if Steam has ever responded to anything Tim Sweeney has ever said.
No, I
Gabe
don't think so.
May have, but I've never seen it. You don't need to look it up, because if it hasn't made a ton of news or made big headlines or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's only because Epic are the only ones complaining about this. Like nobody else has really come forward as much or as hard as Epic has, and it's very weird to see. Like I understand Fortnite makes a lot of money, but does it make that much money on mobile comparatively to PC or consoles? Even then, go ahead.
I might hazard a guess that it makes more money on mobile.
I
could be totally wrong, but that's that.
I have never seen somebody play Fortnite on mobile. Just saying. But anyways,
how many kids are you around, Richard?
I work at a video game store. So.
Damn it! Okay, you may have got me there. you may have got me there.
Everyone's children who walk through those doors. But it's. Sorry. I'm trying to basically say like. King, I feel like cumulatively makes more money than Fortnite does, but they don't have an issue with this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I kind of think Epic is just the only ones who are making a big stink out of it, and this this whole lawsuit probably isn't, of course, to get any sort of monetary gain, but probably just more eyes on Google. And much like they did with Apple, just kind of be like, hey, look how unfair this is, and try to get the average Joe on their side. But the average Joe doesn't care. So at least that I've seen. Go ahead.
I just found from The Verge an article that breaks down through court documents the revenue split between PlayStation, Android, iPhone. PlayStation is responsible for, where's the number? 46.8% of Fortnite's total revenue.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge
just PlayStation.
Chunk. Okay.
Xbox 27.5, and iOS has 7% of the total revenue.
Just iOS.
Just iOS. The remaining 18.7 is split between Android, Nintendo Switch, and PC.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
You are correct then, Richard.
Wow, that's surprising. I thought PC was going to be the
I completely forgot about the Switch.
Leader,
so
leader in that one. So
that was the problem with my summarization. Okay. Now I think just as a matter of principle, like I don't give a shit about Epic, and I think Tim Sweeney partially. I think he may believe that he wants to make the world better, but I don't think that everybody at Epic, or even the way Tim Sweeney wants to go about it, like he's gonna stop and go, okay, we have a 90-10 split, and this is how it's gonna be for the rest of history. The end of history is here. The Berlin Wall has fallen. Games will be peaceful for the rest of time. Like I don't think that's what's gonna happen. But I think just as a matter of principle, like if I would like Steam, I would love it if Steam went down to like a 20-80 revenue split. Just because I think Steam could afford it, and I think game developers should be paid more. But that's and I'm not saying, and I know you agree with me, Richard.
Yes.
But Epic's endeavor here, I don't think is. I think Tim Sweeney may say it's altruistic, but I just, as a form of cynicism, I don't necessarily think it's purely altruistic. Because I think there's other things there. There's also another thing I thought of. Oh, like that is a good question. Why King has never done anything about this? That's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
I just to take a stab at an answer. I wonder if it's just because one, it's expensive and you're suing Apple, and if you're King, you're suing the hand that feeds you. Whereas Epic has a much more diverse portfolio, even though King is tied to Activision Blizzard. So I don't know. That's an interesting question. Why other people don't do it? But I will say this: if this wins, I think companies like King or Zynga, right, they'll jump at the chance to figure out how to monetize it better.
Probably.
Because if they can get a bigger chunk of that 30%, they're going to do it.
I think. Well, the 30% is the average. Like that's the standard.
Yes.
I think with a company like King that's pulling in $2.7 billion as of 2022 in revenue, they may have a deal with Google and or Apple where they get a specific split.
A sweetheart deal?
Yeah.
Huh. I've never seen that reported.
Well, and this is speculation, but once you hit certain levels of revenue, these parent companies that are like providing your outlets take special notice of you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they're more than
companies become whales.
No, exactly, because Google's gonna want King Games to be more on Google or on Android phones and the Google Play Store than iOS and the Apple Play or the Apple Store. So they're gonna try to incentivize them to push their game or give like exclusive deals over here.
That makes sense. And that's what's website is then? Statisticia?
Yeah. Statisticia.
I can't pronounce that. Okay. Righty. Is there anything else we would like to say about this?
Nope.
Besides the existential terror that, again, when it all boils down to it, this is all because little Timmy wants to play as a guy in a banana suit. And a bunch of white old executives want a piece of little Timmy's money, and they're fighting over it. All of it comes down to that, and that is excellent. It is exponentially terrifying. that in all of human history, everything that humans have accomplished, every great work of philosophy and art and science, the one day, hopefully, the world of quantum physics meeting with the world of general relativity and those things coming together to create the theory of everything and all that, the thing that drives so much of the game's economy is, I want to buy a banana suit. and this is what we get. Okay. Final note here. Activision has settled its discrimination lawsuit. As first reported by the Wall Street Journal, Activision Blizzard will pay around $54 million to settle with the California Civil Rights Department, which was formerly the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which sued back in 2021 for gender discrimination. The California Civil Rights Department also says the settlement requires Activision Blizzard to give excess settlement funds, charities that focus on advancing women and gender equality in the workplace, retain an independent consultant, and evaluate/make recommendations regarding Activision Blizzard's compensation and promotion policies and training materials, continue efforts to search for qualified candidates from underrepresented communities. As part of the settlement, and as Activision Blizzard pointed out to Kotaku and a few other outlets, the California Civil Rights Department has filed an amended complaint with the original complaints withdrawn and has acknowledged that no court/independent investigation has substantiated any allegations that Activision Blizzard's board or Kotick acted inappropriately with regards to handling instances of workplace misconduct. Remember, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which was a separate lawsuit, settled for $18 million. And then the SEC had a separate lawsuit, and they settled for like $13 million or something like that, maybe a little bit more. I don't remember. So I think this is the conclusion of all the flurry of lawsuits that happened after that crazy Activision Blizzard summer. And it's all done. And boy, it feels weird now because Activision Blizzard's going to Xbox. Bobby Kotick is, leaving the company and
getting off scot-free.
Going to bitch about it somewhere else, I guess. And hopefully things are better in Activision Blizzard. I do not know. I will say this. Things may have not been proven in a court of law. But this instance, I don't give a shit because we know Bobby Kotick. Bobby Kotick has a reputation. Activision Blizzard, it was not a couple rumors here and there. It was a mass of
documented things, yes.
All kinds of stuff that went down, some really horrific. And you had executives step down and you had executives apologize. So if that's either all for nothing and it's all a big misunderstanding, or shit did go down and shit was wrong. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and whether or not Kotick knew about it, I think is moot, because if you're in a position of power and your institutional control is so poor that the institution you oversee has such a toxic environment, I think you're responsible for that. Looking at your direction, Yves Guillemot, like at some point, heavy is the head that wears the crown. If you're going to be in a major position of power, you're going to have to take responsibility for these kinds of things. But I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And I'll let you guys say your piece here in a second. But I would just like to point out that Activision Blizzard is still a horrible company that has done a ton of bullshit in the past, from what they did with how they conducted themselves when it came to Blitzchung and the Hong Kong protests, all their live service bullshit, the impact Activision has had on Blizzard and Blizzard's games, Bobby Kotick writing the Francis Townsend letter, which I will never, ever, ever get over. And that's just some of the stuff. You guys have anything you would like to say?
I think you covered it.
Richard, are you still here?
Okay, yes, I'm still here. I just I don't have anything to say. Like, it's it's not over. It's not over, and I know we're not going to see anything substantial as far as comeuppance for Kotick or any of any repercussions for Activision Blizzard. But now that they are being overseen by a new parent company, maybe there's something else that we can look forward to, and maybe we'll get the change that we want, but it's not going to happen immediately.
Yeah, and I think also today Activision Blizzard, a better what was that group's name? A better Activision Blizzard, the employee group. They posted a statement. I don't know the context of it all, but about Activision Blizzard, they wanted to end the hybrid home/office work and stuff like that, and there's all kinds of shit, whether or not that's like secretly, what's it called, soft layoffs, where you put in a new requirement and, hey, sorry if you can't do it. I guess we'll just have to lay you off, So yeah, and a lot of companies do that, not just Activision Blizzard, but they're definitely one of the shittiest. So yeah, and I don't know what justice is for something like this. I was not victimized by this, obviously. None of us were. But I don't know how do you make up for, a toxic environment that lasts for a really long time? What is justice in that case? I don't know. But hope things get better there. Hope things improve under new control. Okay, are we ready for tidbits?
Let's do it.
All right. What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits? Richard, what you got for us for tidbits?
We got two quick ones here, but David Szymanski has upped the price on Iron Lung over on Twitter. David Szymanski, the creator and developer of Iron Lung, has defended his decision to raise the price of Iron Lung from $6 to $8 amid complaints from users about the price increase. Szymanski said, quote, Iron Lung's price went up because the game is worth $8. So I want to charge $8 because I want to earn more money, end quote. He then quoted other users who said he's only doing this for the money, to which Szymanski replied, in quotes, there's going to be some cussing here. No fucking shit. I make games for a living. If I didn't want to earn money from them, I wouldn't charge money for them. If you don't think the things that I make are worth the money that I charge, that's completely okay. Don't buy them or wait for a deep sale or go the sneaky route and get them for free by pirating. This will be the last I have to say about the price increase, end quote.
Yeah, it's all contextual. This is David Szymanski is a well-known indie developer. He's done Iron Lung. I think he developed by himself. He's worked on other projects. Yep. And I agree with him. I don't know. I think raising $2 is a small price to pay if you want an indie scene that facilitates people like Szymanski and other people like that. So and you really just have to take two seconds, not even minutes, to just think about how bad of a coffee you've had for $8, how bad of a burger you've had for $8. A movie for more than $8 that you've seen that was terrible. And I think that Iron Lung for how long is it? Is it like a? Oh, it depends.
It depends on
6 hour game, like 2 to 6 hour game.
No, it's shorter. I would say max maybe like 2 hours.
Oh,
you can complete it pretty quickly.
If you're really bad at it, it could take 6 hours.
It is an excellent. If you go into it blind, it is an excellent,
it's an experience.
Excellent little like horror short story.
It is a fantastic game for under $10.
Yes, it's well worth it. Yeah.
So that's all there is to it. Next one is really short. We've heard a lot about this in the last week, but Valve has been using a cheeky method to ban Dota 2 players. Over the last week, streamers who play Dota 2 have been greeted with packages containing a highly toxic lump of coal. As soon as these users opened the gifts, they were met with a permanent ban from Dota 2. These streamers and players have been known to either have toxic personalities and accounts or use third-party software to gain upper hand in matches. But thought that was a really neat way of introducing those bans, especially for Christmas time.
It is. And if any of us have ever read Dante's Inferno, we know that the top ring is people that have their steaks cooked well done. The ring underneath that is Texas Longhorn fans. Then it's a bunch of horrible shit I'm not even going to say. And at the very bottom, it's Henry Kissinger. And then beneath that...
It's people who talk during movies.
It's people who talk during movies. And then beneath that... is every Boston Red Sox fan. And then beneath that
This is a lot more than 9 rings.
Well, it was a DLC to you know, he wrote it a couple years after. And then
the
beneath,
PSP version.
yeah, it was actually only released in Japan in 1427. And they've never had a North American copy before. No,
the King James version.
Yeah, the King James version of yeah, exactly. Frank Cifaldi had to use a time machine to go emulate it and pirate it. No, beneath all that shit is people who cheat in video games. That was the entire joke. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Good. Oh, and one other thing before we end tidbits here. I know you have Circana numbers. Go check out the Video Game History Foundation's online library video.
We'll post a link in the description.
It looks so freaking amazing. They're putting a lot of their stuff. They're digitizing it. They're going to put it online. I don't think it launches until January. But just in terms of preservation and education, it looks so awesome. You can search. Yeah. You can search magazines. You can go through magazine articles. They have in the video they show a disc that was sent to. I think it was a disc that was used for pitching a game, maybe to like a publisher. And the disc opened a website, and they were able to preserve like the website, so you can actually navigate the website itself in the library. They look through some Persona 4 stuff, early like Persona 4 pitch document with like descriptions of what the game is going to be and how they view it and stuff like that. Go check out the video. The work that the Video Game History Foundation does is so important and is so good. And I cannot wait. I assume, I don't know if it's going to be, I assume it's going to be open to the public. I don't think it's like a thing where you have to.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Get an invitation to, but that's one of those things where I could just waste an entire afternoon looking at old video game stuff and old video game magazines. So we'll link it. Go check it out. That was my tidbit. Richard, you have Circana numbers.
I do. There's some a lot of information here. It's slightly longer than normal, but I will get through it promptly. U.S. consumer spending on video game content, hardware, and accessories fell 7% when compared to a year ago to $5.9 billion. The decline was driven by a 24% drop in hardware spending and a 3% dip in content. 2023 year-to-date spending was 1% higher than a year ago at $49.3 billion. November video game content spending dropped 3% when compared to a year ago to $4.6 billion, and 11% decline in console and portable content spending was partially offset by a 3% growth across each of the mobile, subscription, and PC, cloud, and non-console VR content segments. A primary driver of the year-on-year decline in console and portable content was the comparable strength of the new release slate. So November of 2022 featured the launches of both God of War Ragnarok and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So that's why we're not making as much money this year.
Makes sense.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 was the best-selling game of November, of course, instantly becoming the second best-selling game of 2023 year-to-date. That sucks to read. It is the 5th consecutive year that a Call of Duty title was November's bestseller. Red Dead Redemption 2 ranked first in 2018. Hogwarts Legacy ranked third in November. Full game dollar sales driven by the launch of the Switch version of the game. Hogwarts Legacy ranked as the second best-selling title on Switch during November. And Hogwarts Legacy remains the best-selling game of 2023 year-to-date. Assisted by the price promotion, Just Dance 2024 edition jumped from number 73 on the best-selling charts in October to 20th in November. Switch was Just Dance 2024's leading platform during the month. Of course it was. No one plays it on any other console. Inclusion in subscription offerings helped several titles see active user counts for their respective games. On PS5, Aliens Fireteam Elite ranked 11th in monthly active users during November, up from 714 in October. On Xbox Series consoles, Wild Hearts jumped from 501st in October to 18 in November.
Whoa.
Very impressive.
Yeah,
Very impressive.
okay.
Numbers, yeah. On Steam, Lethal Company ranked second in monthly active users in November, behind only Counter-Strike 2. Title placed 115th in October. And Half-Life increased from 383 in October 20th in November, thanks to the release of the Half-Life 25th anniversary update during the month. November video game hardware spending fell 24% when compared to a year ago to $964 million. All current generation consoles experienced a double-digit percentage decline in dollar sales when compared to a year ago, with Nintendo Switch showing the sharpest drop year on year. And the last tidbit I have, somewhat disappointing, but I don't know how much this is affected by whatever. Anyways, according to Circana Players Engagement Tracker, Alan Wake 2 ranked 147th in November active user count on Xbox Series and was 113th on PlayStation 5. I misread this. I thought it meant its ranking in sales, but rereading it, it's just player engagement in November, and of course that makes sense. The game came out in October.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
it's a single player game. Why would people keep playing? I mean, New Game Plus came out, but yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I would assume people are either done with it or makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, those are this month's Circana numbers.
Okay.
Well, last month's.
Thank you very much. And we'll spare a quick word for I want to get his name correct right here. James McCaffrey, who passed away from cancer earlier today, who played Max Payne. He was the director in Control. He was Alex Casey, obviously, in
Alan Wake 2.
Alan Wake 2. That sucks. That's horrible. Thoughts go out to his family, everyone affected by that. I think it's I guess one thing that's neat is that I'm not sure what his career was like. I'm not sure if he did a movie that's yet to come out or did a TV show or whatever. But if Alan Wake 2 is the last thing he ever does, he knocked the fucking ball out of the park, because
high note for sure.
Just Alex Casey's monologues in Alan Wake 2, just every single one floored me.
Well, you know what sucks is that he won't be able to do the Max Payne remakes.
Yeah, which is too bad. I'm sure they'll find somebody that'll be good to take his spot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is one of those instances where it's like, damn, very similar to the voice actor who played Batman for all those years.
Yeah,
Kevin Conroy.
Conroy. Yeah, where it's like you lose that icon. But anyway, yeah, just wanted to make a note of that. Okay, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. You can support us for $2, $4, $7, $10. Get your name and video credits, etc., etc. Richard, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Gaming Discourse FM at the beginning of the show.
Yes. I will have a break this week on Gaming Discourse, but we will have a Christmas episode. It'll be a long one again.
Okay, and at some point you'll be renaming it. We should have done this at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, no, that's all right. That'll come later. We'll worry about that later. No worries.
Okay. So go check that out. Gaming Discourse FM, big Christmas episode, and we'll see you next. We won't see you next week. There will not be a podcast. Follow us on Patreon. We'll talk about it. We'll be back January with our best games of 2023. Bye.
Bye.